Hi there everyone, welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shawalker, your host, and today we're going to be checking out this new album from Panic at the Disco, Viva Vengeance. This is now the 7th studio album from Panic at the Disco and the follow-up to 2018's Pray for the Wicked. Panic at the Disco have always been one of those bands that I've heard in passing for years and years, and I've never really had any problems with them. I like some of the hits, but a lot of their output over the past 20 or so years has felt considerably one note. And it's not a bad note, it's just that after all of this time, it feels like there would maybe be a little bit more of an expansion or an adjustment to this band's approach to songwriting or structure. But it feels like the band has intentionally backed their sound and style into a corner, which is kind of a shame because I think Brendan Urie is a really great vocalist with a lot of drive. I mean, the guy's got pipes. If he wanted to crush some Prince covers, he totally could. But the one-note approach to a lot of the Panic at the Disco stuff over the years is really more and more obvious as time passes. If you put songs from like all over their catalog into one playlist and just press shuffle, there is little to no elements to differentiate from album to album. But at the very least, on Viva Vengeance, there is still drive, there is still an energy, but there isn't really anything in the way of fresh ideas. It's kind of miraculous to me that they managed to pack as much energy into these songs as they do, because there are so many bands who have a bad habit of not bringing anything new to the table and kind of just by the numbers, putting out albums to fulfill contractual obligations or whatever number of reasons, just kind of drop albums for the sake of dropping an album. Those bands don't end up bringing anything new to the table, and they eventually start to stall and eventually sink. But this album doesn't feel like that at all to me. It doesn't seem like Panic at the Disco have yielded any amount of energy to fatigue at all. Instead, what we have here is another collection of tracks that fit right in line with the rest of their catalog in an almost deja vu-like sense of sound, which is okay. There's nothing here that I'm super excited about, but there is some material that is fine, and if you're a Panic at the Disco fan, this will scratch that itch, I'm sure. The opening track, Viva Vengeance, finds Brendan Urie reflecting on his success and the burnout of reaching the heights of popularity that Panic at the Disco have, all while returning to his hometown of Las Vegas and wishing a bit for a reprieve, maybe hoping for something a little bit less chaotic. The whole track seems pretty upbeat, like I've said, nothing crazy or impressive or that stand out in comparison to the standard affair, but that being said, the vocals are pretty good, the song flows nicely, though that can be said about most of the songs here, to be fair. Middle of a Breakup is kind of a silly, maybe intentionally overdone love song about making up in the middle of a breakup by having sex with the person who you're trying to break up with, and now you remember how you've fallen in love with them, and you are reminiscing as you're getting down. It's juvenile, but I'll be damned if it's not catchy. I don't really care for this style of love song, though. It's a little bit on the nose for my taste, but it's fine. Don't Let the Light Go Out opens with this almost like Freebird intro, like guitar lick. It's just lots of light Tennessee blues touches on these guitars, which are done really well and pair very well with Urie's crooning. This again feels like another song about relationship issues, though this song definitely feels a little bit more tasteful than the last track. Decent song for sure. I do think I prefer it to Middle of a Breakup. Local God is a bit of a tribute and a bit of a jab at former bandmates. Urie is kind of mocking people who are now permanently local gods of his music scene, whereas he has now made it to this rock star status. He brings up local acts resenting his band after they got a record deal at 17 years old, saying they hadn't paid their dues and those kinds of general things. So this song feels a little bit justified, but also feels kind of like a bit of a dick-waving competition. I'm a little bit conflicted on it. The chorus does also get a little bit grating by the end of the track, as there isn't really too much else to this song. Star Spangled Banner is one of the only tracks here that really has me wondering what decisions were going on behind this song, with this big chorus that compares Panic at the Disco to the Dead Kennedys, and then for some reason kind of jumps into these verses that sound like they're ripping the bridge section from The Boys Are Back in Town by Thin Lizzy. It all kind of works, but it doesn't quite fit right, especially with the Dead Kennedys comparison. Like, unless you're trying to compare yourselves with like modern Dead Kennedys who have unlatched themselves from Jello Biafra and are now selling their music to play in Levi's commercials. And if that's a comparison you want to make, yeah, sure, but like, why would you want that kind of association? God Killed Rock and Roll is an homage to iconic musicians and the fans who idolize them. The message of the song is fine. I don't really think that there's anything that deep here. The track has this weird kind of slow dance into this kind of rockabilly section that then releases into a very soulful chorus, which ends up being pretty gaudy with these big string sections and harpsichord accompaniment. Even still, all of the delivery is still tight and the performances are all good. I just don't think this is anything all that outstanding, and it feels a little bit overdramatic, even by pop punk standards. It just feels like Brendan Urie's been on like a solid like Queen kick, like that's been his main inspiration, and it just kind of shows here. Say It Louder lyrically does not matter at all, but with that being said, this still ends up being one of the better tracks here, with these great electronic touches and a much closer to the chest use of the strings and the more dramatic instrumentation that works a lot better in kind of a catch and release of tension. Sugar Soaker is either about Brendan Urie's car, or his wife, or drugs. In all seriousness though, this song is much more of an upbeat, poppy track that gives me some like really weird 1950s diner vibes. Like I'm expecting to hear this song paired with like an American diner commercial of some kind. Just clips of stacked pancakes piled high, just swimming in syrup. The song's fine, just gives me pancake vibes. Something about Maggie maybe sounds like it's written from the perspective of like an ex-girlfriend or something. The delivery on the track for everything, past just the lyrics or songwriting, is very theatrical. I'm digging the really big falsetto burst, which are very impressive. Not a huge fan of the backup singers, but that's normally not something I care for a ton, so I'll give them a bit of a pass. The track Sad Clown is kind of a hideous song. I kind of like the touches of Italian here and there in the lyrics, but this song is just sonically kind of too much. Not super here for this one. All By Yourself, I think, is one of the better tracks here. It's a lot more mellow. I'm a big fan of the closing time style this track has. I'm also a fan of the very 70s soul touches, which do come and go a bit, mostly with the bass and the keyboard work. I do wish maybe this song had been stripped back a little bit more because it's got a great melancholy atmosphere. Actually, if they made a stripped back, maybe like a guitar and singer version of most of these songs, I would really like that a lot. Do It to Death is a really straightforward track. It's a very like a fever you can't sweat out in its sound. Of course, that's kind of a lot of the songs here, but this track in particular feels very, very close to those roots. Really, I just think the things that have bothered me here are the same things that have always bothered me about Panic at the Disco, and that's that they very simply just don't really commit to altering the formula very much. I'm still not the biggest fan of these big theatrical breaks and extreme musical bursts that are all over these songs. They are very well done for sure, but it always feels like it's kind of a cheap trick, like they only know how to do a backflip, and they could do a really good backflip, but at the end of the day, it's just a backflip. And I like Brendan Urie's vocals. He hasn't lost his touch. He's got a very sweet boy voice. He can still hit lots of great varieties, but he just tends to kind of stick to the same old, same old. And I don't hate any of this album, but I sure don't think that there's much that stands out from the crowd, with the exception of maybe like Don't Let the Light Go Out, or maybe even Say It Louder. And that's not even because they stand up from the rest of the catalog. That's just because I liked those songs a little bit more than the other tracks here. Personally, I think the musical talent, the musical ability that this band has is slowly being wasted as the years go by, and I'd really love to see some serious attempts at innovating on their next project, because this sound, while no less energetic, while no less solid, has become pretty stale. I'm thinking Viva Las Vengeance is a pretty solid 5. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of this album in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe, and check out my Instagram, my Depop, and my Reverb. Links to those are in the description below. Thank you all so much again, and we'll see you on the flip side.